And soon after that, the king cuts his head off. Khalas, it's gone. This person went from being a noble slave of Allah to worshipping Allah day in and day out, having his own temple for worshipping Allah, to committing zina, murder, and in the end, committing the worst sin. The worst thing a man can possibly do is to commit shirk with Allah. The worst possible thing. And then there's one more story, which actually a brother told me in Saudi Arabia. He said, there was a brother here who, he'd grown up in Saudi Arabia, spent his whole life here. And, after some time, he wanted to go to college, so he decided to go to college in America. He gets admitted, he goes there and he sees all these things that he's never seen before. All these women without clothes, everything, all this fitna, everything that's going on. And he starts like, wow, I've never seen this before. This is great. And that's it, he gets involved. And then he meets a girl, whatever, and lo and behold, they end up committing zina. He spends the night with her, and, that's that. He wakes up in the morning, and the girl's gone. And he's like, where are you, whatever. He puts on his pants, and he puts his hand in his pocket, and there's a note. He opens it up, and it says, welcome to the AIDS Club. So that's it. Right? And you guys think that, a lot of people think that, this can never happen to anybody I know. This is not real. But if you look at the statistics, 1 in 5 people in America are inflicted with some type of STD. So chances are, if someone's committing zina, there's a 25% chance that they're going to contract some type of STD. And that's no joke. That's when your life is over. That's when you're going to meet your Rabb with this stain on you. Right? That's no joke there. So we agree. We understand. We say, yes, this is a problem, this is a fitna, and this is hard for us to be able to deal with this. Right? But there's hope in one story. SubhanAllah, this is something which I was thinking about, and I was thinking about how this is one of the biggest problems that our youth are facing. That everything else kind of stems out from girls and stuff like this. Everything you do, what you buy, and how you present yourself, and what you do in terms of your deen is affected very much in terms of how the opposite gender, how the opposite sex views you. Right? Until one day, I'm sitting in class in Madinah, and my teacher's going over the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. It mentions how Yusuf alayhi salam was tested, and how the wife of his master, the wife of Aziz, took him to the furthest corner of the house, the back corner of the house, way back. There's rooms and rooms and rooms to get to the back. Locks the door, and she says, whatever, I'm here for you. I want to commit zina and do all this stuff. And he seeks protection of Allah. He says, Ma'adatullah. And then he tries to run away, and she grabs him. We all know the story, right? And then what happens? Then the women of the town, the rich women, they begin to make fun of the wife of Aziz. And they say, look what you're doing. You're going after this young guy, whatever. And then she says, okay, come to my house. She invites him over, and she brings in Yusuf alayhi salam. And because of his beauty, they end up cutting themselves with knives. They're holding knives, and they end up cutting themselves. And then what happens after that? Right? After that, if you read the ayah, we see the ayat, you see the story goes that and then the wife of Aziz calls him again. And she says, look, if you don't please me, then I'm going to put you in jail. Right? And then he says, being in jail is more beloved to me than anything else, than what you invite me to. But if you actually look at this ayah, right? It says, يَدْعُونَنِي, that it's in a plural, that it's not one woman calling him, it's actually all these women. That when these women saw his beauty, they all started to go after him. And they all started to invite him to their shahwa. Right? This was the test that this man faced. And then my teacher tells me this story, and we've all heard it before, whatever. And then he says, you know what? Yusuf alayhi salam was a young man when he was tested. And that plays a very important role in why he was able to walk out of this test. And I'm thinking that's not true. Right? You're younger, you have more desires. It's harder for you to deal with this test. It's more difficult for you to be able to deal with this kind of test. But you know what he tells me? He says, when a person is younger, they have more strength, they have more himmah, and they have more courage. Why do you think that when the army recruits people, what age do they recruit you at? 40, 50, 60? What is it? 18? 16? 16, subhanAllah. 16 years old. Because you're young and you have the power to overcome hardships more than any old person can. You're young, you can go through battle, and this person can fight and whatever, and he has more strength and more power, more will and more determination. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us with this test because He knows we are younger and we have more of an ability to fight this off. And then you look at the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Do you know what age he was when he broke the idols? Does anybody know? 14, close. Okay, he was 16 years old. In Mufassirin, they say it was close to 16 years old. This man, Ibrahim alayhi salam, was 16 years old. When he went in, he broke the idols. And he defied not only his father, right, but his whole tribe. Ibrahim alayhi salam, 16 years old. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put him in that position when he was 16 years old. Because this man, then the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he had the ability to fight through this test because he was young. And the reason why we're tested with things like this is because we're young and we have the ability to fight through these things. We have the ability to overcome these tests. Now, there's a couple other things that I want to talk about, but I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to leave it for next time, inshallah. If Allah ever gives us a chance to meet again or whatever, we'll talk about other issues. But a lot of times, you hear these things and you want to do something, but a lot of obstacles come in your way. You want to change the way you deal with certain things, but there's hardships in your way. So I thought about things that really help a person change. Especially, like, for example, when I started to become closer to the deen, and started to become closer to Islam, and the true guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what really helped me. And one of the main things was the friends I had around me. One of the main things was who I kept around me at every time. And if you look at it with true honesty, and the ulama have also said this, that your friends or the people who are around you, they fall into one of two categories. There's no third category. Either number one, they're good. They're calling you towards good. They're calling you towards tawheed. They're calling you towards the worship of Allah. They're calling you towards obeying Allah and His Messenger and following the Sunnah and doing what's right and following the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or number two, they don't fall in that category. There's the second category. They're bad and they're calling you towards the incorrect path. The path that leads to Jahannam, the path of shaitan. There's no third path here. There's no middle ground where you can be like, I'll get by somewhere in the middle. If your friends aren't pulling you towards the good, they're pulling you towards the bad. I'm sorry. Nobody can tell me that my friend, doesn't affect me at all. And he has nothing to do with the way I am. He does. Or she does. And if he's not pulling you towards what's right and pushing you towards what's good, he's pushing you towards what's bad. And that's the reality of it. And the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned this in a hadith when he said that a man is on the religion of his khalil. He's on the way of, or his path of his friend. That if you want to look at a person, if you want to see what a person's like, you look at his friend. If you want to see what you're like, you look at your friend. You look at your best friend, you look him in the eye and say, that's who I am. This is me. My people. The way I am is what's around me. The people around me, that's who I am. And that's what defines me. And that's the way I am ending up. That's the reality of my situation. And then there's an Arabic expression. Basically the meaning of it is that, your companion or your friend is someone who pulls you towards something. That the definition of a friend or a companion is a person who's pulling you towards something. So like I said, they're either pulling you towards what's right or they're pulling you towards what's wrong. Right? And then we have the other hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that he gave the analogy of a person A who hangs out with a seller of like perfumes and colognes and stuff, Tib. And if he's hanging out with this guy, either he's buying, this tib from him, these good smells from him, or he's just with him all the time. And he's shaking his hand, he's hanging out with him, and he walks away at the end of the day, and what does he have on him? He's got some type of a good smell on.